So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go into InDesign, and we're going to look at InDesign. I'm going to move this out of the way. There we are. So this is my where my project has is so far. And what I did here, guys, is you'll see the demo that I recorded last night and I posted in the learning resources. Here I created these two buttons, one that says prior, one that says next. So that demo is already recorded and you can view it. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to actually delete these, and I'm going to use text buttons that say actually the name of the pages that I'm when I click on those text buttons, I'm going to a specific page. So I'm going to go in my text, and what I'm going to do actually, I'm going to go in layers. I'm going to lock all the layers and create a new layer called buttons. I already created it, so sorry, it's already there, but it's easy to create a layer. Just click on here, and I renamed it buttons. So now I know I'm putting all my buttons in one spot. That it really helps. I'm one of those people that got to be organized. I don't know why, but it's really important to me. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to write about Art 182. So I'm going to start writing what is going to be the links, right? So I know after the opening page, that is this one, I have about Art 182. I have the table of content. I have lecture projects and exercises. And then I have a bio page, and then I have a final page. So I'm going to write all those links and make them into buttons that take me through all those pages, okay? So I'm going to go and format it in terms of text, because after all, even though in this demo, I'm not very careful about the design side because I want to just get through the technical side, still, it's kind of nice to have a nice type in there and everything works, right? So I'm going to call it about 182. I'm going to give it a color. I'm not sure what's the best color. Maybe I'm going to go down here. Let me use this kind of, maybe this yellow. It might disappear actually. So let's try the dark brown. Okay. So I have my first button. It's called About Art 182. Actually, you know what? Did it give it the dark brown color? Yeah, it did. Sorry. I thought it did. Okay, so what I'm going to do is these, if I want them to be separate button with separate rollovers effect, I need to have these as different boxes. So I'm going to take this about. I'm going to option click and drag it, holding the shift key. And right below, the second one is called table of content, right? So I'm going to type sorry, table of content. And you know what? I don't like about all screaming like that. So I'm going to make it lower cases. Remember that if you take typography classes, we have amazing instructor that will teach you all about it. But remember that when you have everything uppercases, it tends to be associated with shouting. I'm going to also give it a little bit more space. Hopefully I have enough space for everything. Again, sorry, I did not mean to zoom. I'm not sure why I zoomed. I was holding, clicking and dragging and holding Option or Alt, by the way. That's what I was trying to do. Okay, so after table of content, I think the first one is, I believe, lectures. There is a page on lectures, and then there is one on, I believe the next one is exercises. And then there's one that is projects. So I'm basically creating all my little button, my little navigation. And this one, I mean, obviously the spacing, I could use there is by the way, there is a line palette that would allow me to space everything precisely. But as I said, for now, what I'm kind of focused on is getting these buttons to look right. So after project, I believe there is a about me page, or bio, or whatever you want to call it, CV, whatever you have in there. Some people might have more like a formal thing, or some people might have something less formal. And then I forgot what I called the final page. Maybe we can call it goodbye. Do you spell goodbye like that? I'm not sure. Isn't that sad? I don't remember how to spell goodbye. I don't write it very often, to be honest. I was going to go in a line and everything, but I'm going to actually, for now, just not worry too much about it. I'm going to show you how these can become a navigation. So treat it like buttons more than worry about spacing and stuff. Just for a matter of economy of time. Because what I would like to do today after the demo is obviously look at your work and make sure that we have this week really to focus on the design and next week to make sure we get it built. Okay, so what I can do is I can select it all. I can zoom out a little bit and place it in the page where I feel like it might works best. Maybe it's right here. Generally, a navigation, though, is actually tends to stay in the same spot over and over again. That means it's one of those things that you don't want to be hunting around for it in your pages. So oftentimes we tend to keep it in one spot. So let me put it here for now. I didn't really look at all my pages trying to figure out where is best to be. But for now, let's leave it like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this into a button. Everybody with me so far, right? Any questions? Oops, sorry. I was trying to scoot it up, but it wasn't. It was going only sideways. There it is. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into the buttons palette. Now, if you don't see all these palettes, go under the workspace right here and choose interactive PDF. The default is essential, I believe, or essential classic, I forget. So go in interactive PDF and you'll see all these options, buttons and stuff. Now, one thing I want to tell you before we do the buttons, for the buttons to really work, you want this button to target a certain page. In this case, it's going to be this page, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go into my pages palette, make sure that the page 2, that is the about, is highlighted. I double click on it to make sure. And I'm going to actually go under bookmarks and set a bookmark there called About 182. So I'm going to go in there, add a bookmark to that page, and I call it About Art 182. And I hit enter. Then I'm going to go to the following page. So I'm going to go in the pages and say, okay, this one is the table of content. And then you obviously go in your bookmark, add another one, and you call it TOC. I'm going to call it TOC, the table of content, just for a matter of speed again. And then you keep doing this, right? Then you go in the fourth page, and this one is exercises. So you add a bookmark and you call it exercises. You kind of get it what I'm doing here. So my pages all have a bookmark, something that identifies them as what they are. So when I create my button, I can point to that particular page. So this one is lectures. So I'm going to go in and say in my bookmarks that I want to have lectures in there. I'm going to keep doing it without talking because you got the gist of what I'm doing. I'm just as quickly as I can, labeling my pages by adding for each of those pages a bookmark. And there should be an about me here. Oh, did not put anything there, but. And then I should have one last page that is the very last one, I think, is just the, there it is the thank you, goodbye one. Okay, perfect. So now I have all my bookmark. I can finally, by the way, I would want to possibly delete these. As I said, in certain pages, in certain sections, you might want to have the next and the prior, because you might want to have a navigation that takes you to a certain section like lectures, but then within that section, you can move through it with the buttons next or, previous page. But for now, what I'm showing you is how to create these text buttons and how to create rollovers. So let's start from this one. Again, I'm going to go like I was doing earlier under my buttons. And right here, it asks me which type, what do you want this to be? All right, so I want it to be a button. I'm going to call it About. I'm actually one of those people that names everything. If I did not put a name there, I would give it a default, but I really care about making sure that it has a name because to me, it makes a lot of sense to have a name. So what you want to, this one, what it says is the mouse action. That means on release, this will happen. So whenever you're clicking on something and release the mouse button, certain things will happen. What is it going to happen? You go in here and you choose go to destination. By the way, let me explain this once again. I explained it in a different video. All the actions that you see, all these top actions from go to destination to video, work for anything that you want to publish, no matter if it's an interactive PDF, if it's a EPUB, if it's a SWF, that is a more animation-based format, everything up there in these works. Down here, this midsection works only if you export as an EPUB, and the very bottom one, these actions only work if you export as PDF. Go to destination works if you export as interactive PDF for sure, like as I said, also as an EPUB or a SWF. So I'm going to say go to destination. When you go to destination, tells you we're going to target your document. Where do you want to go? And you see by default, it picked the right categories, but I could here have chosen any of my bookmark. Here I have the normal state, but if I click on rollover, what this will do, it will create a copy of the normal state. So in here now, I could change the color, right? I could go in with my text and go in there and change the color so that in the normal state is brown, but when I mouse over it is, let's say, yellow. Or just to keep it faster, you could go in there and say, okay, I'm going to make it 50% opacity. So when I mouse over, the opacity goes down, for example. So the overstate, you really decide what to do. This is the normal. This is the overstate right now, just again, for a matter of just being quick about it. As I said, I could instead go in there and say, okay, I'm going to go with my text tool right here and select the inside instead and go under swatches and say I want it to be yellow. So now when I go back into my buttons, oops, sorry. If you go back into your buttons right here, now you have a normal state that is brown and the overstate that is yellow. Now you can see that, right? So it's really easy to decide what you want to do. In the overstate, you could even plug in an image. So what could happen is that when I roll over, not only the text turn yellow, but right here, I could have an image. I obviously don't have it ready in my layers or anything, so I cannot turn it on, but that would be a really easy way to go. So that's how you create a basically text that links to a certain page. I'm going to keep going and doing it a few more times just for a matter of repetition. Generally really helps to cement knowledge. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to say button. I'm going to call it TOC, table of content. I'm going to go and say that I want to go to destination. And obviously by default, always go to the first bookmark. So now you really need to find the right page. TOC. I'm going to choose the rollover, guys, if you don't mind, the 50% opacity, just because it's faster for this one. And I keep going so that all my files, my elements, I'm going to do just the first three for the sake of it, just for the sake of, again, being kind of short so that I can get to see your work and we can do a little bit of design critiques on your project. Right here on release is fine. Notice that I could choose on click on rollover. You could choose all kind of stuff, but our release is the default and is definitely pretty good. Go to destination. So in here, I need to choose lectures. I'm going to do a rollover and I'm going to make it 50% just to kind of. So let's say I'm happy. I'm going to do 3 buttons for now. I'm going to save it, Control S, and I'm going to actually preview it right now. And one way to preview it, I'm moving the buttons up, is to go in here and say I wanted to preview all the document. Is a multi-page document. And when you hit play, it will create, you'll see a little spinning wheel at a certain point. There it is. It's not a spinning wheel, but it's a scroll bar that is telling you that it's creating an HTML preview for you. So when I mouse over here, you remember the first one I did in yellow versus these ones are just, oh, it's funny. The other two don't show as much. By the way, this preview is not always accurate, and it does not handle transparency really well. So you can see how the first one works great, but the other two, it doesn't change the transparency. Now, if it doesn't work in the preview, that doesn't mean that it doesn't work. It's just a preview that has a few limitations. So one way to go about it, that I always do anyway, is I eventually export it. So I go and I say File, Export, and I'm going to export it as a PDF with buttons, and I'm going to call it text because they're text buttons. And interactive is good. I'm going to say save. I'm going to do all pages. Let me show you one thing that is interesting. If I click on here, open in full screen mode, when I double click on the PDF, it will ask me, there will be a message that says, can you, do you want to use full screen? And if you say yes, it will take your entire screen. This is kind of nice because then you don't have the clutter of your desktop, of a browser, if this was something that you actually had as a website. So the full screen mode is really sweet. If you did this though, I recommend that when you email your PDF to someone, you let them know in the body of the email that this is going to happen and it's totally fine, and they say yes, so if they want to see it in full screen mode. I'm going to leave it there, but I'm kind of worried because we are on Zoom, and I worry that it's going to stop the Zoom because as I said, I have a lot of the Zoom interface in there. I'm going to actually try. In worst case, if it gets disconnected from Zoom, wait for me 2 minutes and I'll be back, okay? So I'm going to say export. One other thing I want you to know is that you could add page transitions. I'll show you in a minute how you can do that. There's actually a video on learning resources on how to do that. But also, if you forgot, you could go in there and say, hey, look, I'm going to actually do a fade. So what this means that when you're moving from one page to the other, especially when you have the next option, you know, the arrows that says next or previous page, what it'll do is it'll create a fade from one page to the other. That is kind of nice. I'm going to say export right now. Oh, it's telling me that I have a broken font. That's a bummer, but I'm going to leave it for now. So you see, this is happening. It's telling me this document is trying to put Acrobat in full screen mode. Do you want to do that? I'm going to say yes. As I said, if Zoom stops or something happens, I'll be back with you guys, okay? Actually, it worked really well. Did you guys see the fading? How it came in as a fade? It's pretty sweet. And then here's another fade. So you see how it works pretty nicely. Now, the only problem, as you might have noticed, is that now, if I go into one of these pages, let me go in table of contents. There it is. You see that it worked, by the way. And you see even the rollover works. When you mouse over table of content of a lecture, it kind of goes low opacity. The problem I have right now is that the only way to navigate through my pages beside the arrow keys is that my menu is only in the first page, and that's a problem. So what you would want to do, if let's say we're done with the menu right now, we're completely done. I'm not, because I just did 3 buttons only. But what you would want to do here, you would want to copy this menu, Command C, and you can put in all the various pages, like you would go in this page and you could do edit, paste, and place. Or obviously you could put it in a master page. That would be totally fine as well. I'm going to actually say Command Z because the problem I have right now here is that this is in the way. So I would want to go and unlock my layer and kind of move things around so that my navigation is actually okay where I have it. As I said, when I created it in the first page, I wasn't really too careful about where to put in all the pages because, and up here, by the way, another thing I've told a lot of my students is maybe Enrica Costello should be in every page. Maybe not as prominent as it is in the first page, but it should possibly be in every page. Because if I send this to an employer and he goes and watches some of my stuff and then has to take a phone call and comes back to my work, it wouldn't be bad if it had my name in there in some ways, right? So I've been telling my students to consider also, even in the first page, maybe have it bigger, in the following page, I have it kind of more subtle and in the background, but having your name there would not be a bad deal. So again, you would want to go into all your pages and have your navigation somewhere. And maybe it doesn't have to be that big, or it doesn't have to be in vertical that tends to be occupying more room. Maybe you want it horizontal up here so that it wouldn't occupy as much room, right? That what I mean here is that you could have something that is more like this. Obviously, we would want to later on align it and everything. Again, if you go in the window palette, there is an align palette that works beautifully, by the way. And then, so you could have something like this and then have the last 4 right below as well. So it's up to you how you want your navigation and where you want it. Oh, actually, I just realized that we have an uneven thing. Oopsie doopsie, but You get it, what I mean, right? That you could have in a place that is not as, because this can tend to be prime right or real estate. That's why the navigation is generally at the top or kind of lined up on the side, is also because in browsers, generally there is a chance that you see here you have scroll bar, that you get scroll bars or things get cut out. So that's why the navigation generally is up here or here, because if something gets cut out, it cuts out the bottom and the right side of the screen. That's when you're viewing it on a browser though. But this is kind of what I wanted to show you, was how do you create a link that is a text-based link? How do you add a rollover to it? And how you can honestly add a rollover that could be the same text that is different color, but you could also add a rollover that actually has, target a different spot in the page and an image shows up at that point. And that's totally fine. As long as when you are on that button interface, when you're inside the button palette right here, when you're in the overstate, as long as you populate it with what it needs to be, in the overstate, that means when you mouse over, the overstate will show you whatever you bring in right in this overstate. By the way, another thing that is typical is that you do the overstate and then you forget to go back to normal. And it's kind of annoying because that means then you will be working on your document and you'll have this kind of thing that is in the overstate that is kind of, something I don't like. So I generally make sure to go back to normal. So that's what I wanted to show you today, was mostly how do you get a piece of text to become a button, how to, instead of having just the arrow keys that say next page or previous page, you could have a full-blown text navigation that takes you to all the various pages of your project.
Excuse me, Enrica?
Yes?
Are you going to post this tutorial?
Yes, that's why I'm recording it.
Okay, thank you.
I always try. Okay, let me stop sharing and stop the recording.